Welcome to Space Code Foundation's interview series for women of color in space. I'm Nivedita Raju, the Director of Legal Affairs and Research. This is our 10th episode of the Women of Color interview series, and we're extremely grateful for your support. It was important to create such spaces because they are currently very limited in our industry. And so every episode of our series has so far featured a different woman of color sharing her experiences and advice for students and young professionals who wish to join the sector. This week, we have Kavindi De Silva. Kavindi is currently leading global events at Space Hero, which is an upcoming reality series. Welcome, Kavindi.
Please tell us about your background and what led you to work in the space sector.
So my background is in astronomy and physics. I transferred from a university in Sri Lanka to the US to complete my bachelor's degree. And then I moved back to Sri Lanka. I worked in education for a little bit, partially in early childhood and then in university education, and then shifted myself towards business. This was not a first choice of me, but the situations around me at that time really made me think like, okay, maybe I should switch to business. And I learned a lot about business management, international business, marketing, and all of that. And that kind of sparked my interest of like, how can I kind of combine space and business together? Because I kind of found the connection there of like, wow, space, like astronomy, physics, those are like really big topics. And sometimes people disconnect from those topics immediately. But in the business world, it's to do with a lot of people. It's to do with your, communities and your societies. And I kind of found out that it's really nice if somebody really understood what I did in astrophysics and if somebody understood space a little bit better. And back then when I was studying business, I just found out that a lot of people around me didn't really understood space and didn't really understood the concepts or the news or the statuses that were going on at that time with regards to space. Back then, nothing was really happening in space like it is right now, even with space travel and, with human spaceflight and things like that. But when I was studying astrophysics, everybody around me was so into it, and they believed that everyone around them also knew about space. But I think that was a big disconnect. So I kind of, brought in those two together, and I did a lot of outreach projects when I was in Sri Lanka. And I combined a lot of the astronomy side of things, but also space side of things, because they're not the same, but they fall under like, let's say, one umbrella. And that kind of led me to look for master's opportunities or, more higher education opportunities that were a bit interdisciplinary, but also there is a focus in space, but I want to connect it to people. And that's when I came across ISU, the International Space University, and kind of started my way to space through the university and attended a few programs. I worked with the university a couple of summers in Europe and in Australia. And then I pursued my master's with ISU and kind of shifted my way towards human spaceflight, experiments on the ISS. And now that also led me to my current job with Space Hero, which is a space and media company. And, that's kind of what I was thinking back then, how to combine business, space, and people together. And that's definitely through media. That's where I am right now. But how did everything, come to me, and why did I think of, pursuing space, or where did that spark happen? It all started with when I was really young. I had no idea about space or astronomy or anything that is related to what I'm doing right now. And it triggered an interest in me to kind of find out what space is all about, what's out there. I was really interested in sky observations and attending all these night camps and stuff. One day I was at the library and I saw this picture of the first EVA that was done in space. And I was really curious, and I asked the librarian, like, what is this? Who is this? Why? And all these questions. And the librarian was like, oh, this is in space. And I was like, what is space? And then it really triggered more questions in my life. And I just wrote to the Exact magazine and I asked them to send me a copy every month, because it was some sort of like a science journal that did few pages on space. And that is where everything kind of started for me. And I made kind of a very childhood promise for myself that, oh yeah, one day, I'm going to be this person on this page. And I had no idea that was an astronaut, that was in space, did all these critical things that we right now know that astronauts do. And I still up to date have that page with me. And it really, sparked that interest and that motivation in me, and I still carry it with me. And even though it was a childhood dream, I didn't stop dreaming, and that is still the dream, to become an astronaut.
That's beautiful. And, I think that it's also a testament to how we need more women like you who aim to become astronauts in this day and age. So this is really wonderful. And in addition to all of this, in addition to your ambitions, you are also a professional dance instructor. You had earlier talked to me about the link between dance and space. Can you please elaborate on this a little bit more for our viewers?
That's a very interesting question. Dance is as close to me as space is. And I think that's definitely like my second passion, if I could say. And when I don't do anything space or science related, I really like to dance, mainly teach how to dance. And the link that I found between dance and space is the communication and the understanding that you need. Teaching dancing requires the same talent and I would say dedication as learning and teaching and educating someone about space. People are always afraid to try new things. Like dancing, people have told me, I've never danced before. I have two left feet. I'm not a dancer. I'm not into dancing. Same type of excuses like some people tell me, oh, I've never really thought about, being in the space career. I'm not smart enough to do space. I don't come from a rich family. I don't know how to incorporate that in my education. And some people, say, I don't believe in human space flight, or I don't believe in this type of, sector in space, so forth. So I really think that these two come together when you try to make each community understand about the other community. So one of my favorite things to do is teaching dance to people that are in my space community and also talk about space to the people in my dance communities. And I learned so much on how to communicate to each other. And it is a very interesting process and also a learning experience for me.
Wow, that's fascinating how you managed to achieve this kind of cross collaboration also across two totally different fields. Those are very relevant points that you've mentioned, especially about trying something new and putting yourself out there. That's advice that the younger generation could definitely benefit from as well. And so now you have become events manager at Space Hero. Can you tell us a little bit more about the show and what we can expect in the coming months?
I'm actually very excited to be part with Space Hero, this initiative that is going to send the first global citizen to space for a 7-day mission at the ISS. And this will take place in 2023. And right now we are doing all the things that are regarding logistics, the pre-production, and everything that leads to the 2023 mission. At the end, there will be 24 finalists that will be competing, 12 from developing countries and 12 from developed countries. And this plays a very huge part because I come from a developing country. I come from Sri Lanka. And when I was dreaming on becoming an astronaut, there was always this doubt in me, like, how do I become that? How is it possible for me? Because everything was either through an agency. And at that time, we didn't have any private companies to, even think about that possibility. But now with initiatives like Space Hero, it doesn't matter from what country you come from. You can apply, you can be part of this. No regulation on the type of education that you should have had or the type of experiences, as long as you're 18 and above and you speak a decent level of English and are able to communicate, you can apply and be part of this. And I think that's such a great opportunity that even women or girls that want to dream about becoming an astronaut and be part of the space industry now have opportunities. And I am a big supporter of commercializing these opportunities, especially for underdeveloping and so underprivileged communities in the world, that they can take part in everything that is space.
Thank you for explaining that and breaking that down. This concept is so unique, and Space Hero aims to bring human spaceflight to other countries, as you mentioned, which do not have that capacity. This way, there will be more representation. There'll be more people who can actively participate in the journey and in the outcome that is space. You mentioned that your dream is and always was to become an astronaut. What exactly were the responses back home when you talked about these ambitions? And if there were challenges, how did you manage to navigate those?
I'm glad you asked this question because this is something I really want to talk about and always help people out. I guess it's kind of easy to dream big and have your level of dreams out there, but it's not that easy to when it comes to like communicating your dream or making sure that people around you and your support system understands this. And especially when you come from a society or a community that is that has their own limitations and societal boundaries, especially when it maybe come to to, being a girl or a boy, or, your family status, or your, societal upbringing, your financials. This is very hard. And I think that is something that I went through to like, yeah, I want to become an astronaut, but like, how do I tell my parents that I want to be that when their imagination is limited towards me just becoming a doctor or a teacher or something that society has already defined for me? That was very hard for me and also quite demotivating at some times, but I didn't let it stop me. I was in love with, being an astronaut, or like being with the thought of like, oh, one day I'm going to go to space. And I really wanted that. And I really want it even right now. So I always kept telling people, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to become an astronaut. I want to go to space. And some people just tore me down, or like said something really mean to me, or was like, oh, you're a girl, or like, oh, really, you want to become an astronaut? Okay, I don't know how, are you crazy? Just things like that. But I took it upon me to kind of prove them wrong, or like re-educate them that even though I'm a girl, even though I come, from a background like this, or from a family like this, that it doesn't really limit me, and nothing should. I learned it the hard way and the long way, that if you want to be part of space, you don't need to be super smart. You don't need to have your PhDs, and you don't need to go to all these elite universities, that you really have to have that dream and motivation, and be able to also communicate that to your surroundings and your support system, and help people around you as you help yourself to get to this dream. And always look for resources and opportunities, and they're all out there. It's just that maybe we're limited with the societal standards that I was telling about, or maybe the resources that we have. And we always have these norms, like you need to have a lot of money, you need to be like super smart, and you need to come from a certain background to be part of these things. That's not true. And I think I learned it, but now what I want to do is also, in the meantime, while I achieve my dream, to let people know that they can do the same. And yeah, if I did it, they could, probably and possibly do it too. I didn't have all the resources, and I took my time. But now that I think, if I told this to my younger self, and I was maybe I guess 10 to 15 years ago, that would have helped me a lot. And I would have probably had my route a bit faster, met more people that were more influential, or knew how to network and build my surrounding according to achieving my dream. So now that I like to do that, when somebody asks a question, I ask them harder questions. And sometimes talking about financials, or talking about the fact that your family, your parents, your best friends don't really support you, these things we don't want to talk about, especially when you come from, I would say, South Asia, or like a developing region. Family is a very important unit, and you don't want to talk bad, or you don't want to talk against them, because they're very important to you. But I think this is something we need to talk about, especially also if you're a girl coming from the region, because it is culturally not very encouraged to pursue these things. And I think it's very important, because I believe that you have to dream big and also dream loud.
Thank you so much for sharing these personal insights with us. There's a lot that you've raised in these last few minutes. You mentioned some very specific pieces of advice, including how taboo the subject is, and the need for those kind of support systems, which we don't really get. So, how, in your opinion, should we foster this kind of network? Are there ways to encourage the next generation?
I think right now there are a few opportunities out there, if not more, if we look a bit beyond. And I think for me, when I look back, some things that I would advise my younger self would be to look for mentorship, to look for my community, or to look for places and opportunities that, in my case, talk about space travel, talk about the possibility of becoming an astronaut, learning more about space. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which part of space. It can be any discipline. We now know there's like about 7 disciplines in space. And, if I have the interest of becoming a lawyer, I can now learn about space law and see how I can, navigate myself through such like, space engineering, space humanities. There's many. And I think when you establish that, okay, this is my interest in space, go look on the internet for events, for workshops, for, communities, and for clubs that, talk about these things. Maybe there's a book club that is, about space, or maybe there are like monthly workshops that someone is doing online, or maybe it's a hybrid thing. And I know now, even in Sri Lanka, there are young communities, even in schools and universities, that have now formed space clubs and are part of SGAC and SEDS and many of these organizations, which, were not there when I was in school. I had to create my own society and my own community when it comes to astronomy and space, because it wasn't there when I was a student. But then I was like, if I create one, I could then, take it forward, and the ones that are coming behind me can really take part in these things and don't have the same problem that I have, because it's always hard to initiate something, but when you do it, I think it's very easy to follow. So I think look for mentorship. There are so many people out there who are very helpful and who are very kind and always, would like to help you, especially when it comes to space education. That's my experience. And also, find your community, as I said, to talk about it, to see what's out there, learn. And we all have internet, so let's use it wisely and let's look for more opportunities. I think that would be also really life changing. Just a click sometimes, you won't know that something is just a click away. And then I think fostering these things at our very foundational level, the next steps will be more visible and will be more practical towards that. And we won't be very scared to pursue the rest of the stuff. So I guess that's kind of where I would start, despite where you're coming from, what your background is, and even looking at the people who will believe in you or not.
Thank you, Kavindi. That was beautiful. You talked a little bit about your identity and how, because you moved around a lot, that was also something that was challenging for you. Is there advice that you have for students who face these kinds of issues?
I think when it comes to traveling and kind of looking beyond, and let's say the second step of, once you see an opportunity and you see that and you want to pursue it, what do you do? Now your next step is to kind of get out of your comfort zone and go out there and, be part of it. And again, coming from Sri Lanka, we have very, very less opportunities and very less chances to be part of these things. And it's always in a different country, in a different community setting. And I think once you get through the hassle of convincing your parents and getting the financial support to attend these events or conferences and courses, be always open-minded, have that attitude to, take up a challenge and have the learning mentality always. I think that helped me a lot because I got the opportunity to move around a little bit. As you said, I first started my entry to space, I think, with space education, or like me knowing that, wow, these are the opportunities and this is what I can learn when it comes to space, was in Australia. I was part of ISU, the International Space University. And I've never been to Australia before. I've heard a lot of things about Australia, of course, but that was my first experience. And I met amazing people, had great experiences with my friends that I made. And, we're still best friends up to this date. And then I got to move around to Europe and a little bit to the US and so forth. And every culture and every country is different. And you should never limit yourself in your thinking, like, this is how you grew up and this is how the world is and should be. Don't have that mentality. Have the open, learning curve in you, saying that, whatever comes my way, I will take it. I will learn about it. You will always find friends around you, and, you can always talk about it and, learn about certain things. So I think putting yourself out there and not being afraid to explore and to learn about different cultures, because one thing is, yes, you learn about space, but it's always not in the books. You also learn a lot about the people with communication. And how I said about dancing in space, I never saw those two connected before, but now I see a very much of a connection there. And I think those things really help. Knowing how to communicate and talk to people is very important. So I think it's one thing to learn and to understand, but if you're also able to communicate that to a wider audience, that's a big plus. And traveling around, going to these places really helps it, and I think the more you travel, the more you try and get to attend these things, space related or not, really makes the difference. So I think that is also one thing that I'd really encourage. Don't be afraid. Might be miles and miles away, continents away, but it's okay. I think you can do it.
Thank you, Kavindi, for sharing these insights with us, which are both very personal and very creative. Who would have thought that space and dance would share so much in common? We look forward to sharing more about our next episode soon. Until then, please continue to support us, like this video, follow us on social media, and join us on Patreon. Thank you.